Absolute Batman pulls absolutely no punches. I'm not going to bury the lead. If you're the type to be offended over violence against racists, this book may not be for you. The Absolute Batman Annual was everything I expected, and I was not disappointed. There are 3 stories in the annual, one by James Herron, one by Meredith McLaren, but the lead story is by Daniel Warren Johnson. In his story, Absolute Batman takes on white supremacists who attack a migrant camp on the outskirts of Gotham. Like I mentioned in the opening, the story pulls no punches. Literally. It is as far from subtle as you can get. That said, Johnson is a storyteller, so he puts the story first, and as a result, he creates a very interesting tale. Before I get into this story, I think it's necessary to give some context to why Johnson made it. In a recent comic book podcast, Johnson explained that when Absolute Batman debuted, his agent contacted him about working on the title, maybe doing a fill-in issue. But Johnson turned it down because he'd rather work on his own story, not pop in on someone else's. He also didn't have any ideas. Then the 2024 election happened, followed by a number of people giving the Nazi salute, and one morning, while lying in bed, the image of Batman breaking someone's arm mid-salute popped into Johnson's head. He had an idea, but no story. It took him a while to come up with something, and eventually he came up with what we see in the annual. In the interview, he said that DC Comics vetted all the violent panels, but nothing got cut. What we see is a story he wanted to tell. He also said that drawing the story was a bitch, his words, not just technically, but also emotionally, because he was watching the story he was telling coming to life in real time. Johnson also made no bones about his motivation. He's angry. He's angry over the election. He's angry over the actions of the discount Gestapo. He's angry with the people who support that brutality. And he felt like he had to do something, and telling this story was something he could do. He's also self-aware, so he asks in the interview whether this might be the cringiest thing he's ever done. He didn't just want to make a story about Batman beating up people who absolutely deserve it. He wanted there to be a point. In short, he's an actual storyteller, and he proves it with this annual. The story is pretty simple. It's set a little while before the events of the first issue, and shows how Batman gets to Batmobile. It opens with a flashback of a young Bruce Wayne with his father who's reading a newspaper about some extremist bombing. Bruce wants to know why they did it, and Thomas doesn't have an answer. Instead, he says that he doesn't know how to fix the problems of the world, but he does know what he's good at, teaching. And hopefully he can make enough of a difference with his students so that they won't make the same mistakes as the extremists. And then he asks Bruce what he'll do. And this page is the answer. Yeah, not subtle. And let's just take a moment to drink it in, because however much Johnson says he struggled with the art, this is some of his best work. I can literally hear the fire burning. He has no business being this loose and this good. He's just throwing down lines. I've seen him draw. I know how he does this. I don't know how he makes it work. In anybody else's hands, this would be an inking nightmare. In Daniel Warren Johnson's hands, it's the best fire I've seen in years. Anyway, Bruce arrives at Slaughter Swamp on the outskirts of Gotham to buy the gear he uses in the first couple of issues. I love the little addition of him asking if these were non-lethal and the guy going less lethal. Like, bruh, it's a flamethrower. When have flamethrowers ever been non-lethal? And we're going to come back to that lethal thing because you'll see. So while he gets the gear, Bruce asks about the place, and the guy explains that a company was building something but then abandoned it. And when Bruce asks about the people, the guy says that he guesses they came looking for something better, but didn't find it. Then Bruce hears a bunch of people dressed in pig masks attacking the mother and her son, and again, it's not subtle. They attack the mother and the son over their language, break the kids' toys, and threaten to beat the kid, presumably to death, but they find out that Bruce pulls no punches. Now, things don't play out as you'd expect. Bruce doesn't manhandle all of them. Instead, he gets cold-cocked by the guy he bought the gear from. Turns out that guy's part of the group and he's racist too. Then we meet DJ, the guy running the group. He and his boys plan to get payback against the city for embracing, quote, the swill, aka the migrants. They beat the bejesus out of Bruce until a priest, Father Peters, jumps in for the save. The racists run off, and Peters takes Bruce back to his place to patch Bruce up. While there, Bruce spots a photo of Peters at an old peace protest. Keep that one on the back burner. He also asks about the group. Peters explains that some outsider came in and captured the minds of the men and gave them a dark place to go. The plan is for DJ's crew to clear the encampment by any means necessary. Bruce decides to leave, and Peters asks what he's going to do, and Bruce answers. Sometimes peace isn't an option. Sometimes words don't work. And he's not wrong. Cue the people who constantly talk about using Second Amendment solutions against their political enemies, like they did in Buffalo, El Paso, Colorado Springs, Charleston, Minnesota, and Michigan, ironically whining that the left is violent. Setting that hypocrisy aside, the reality is that sometimes it is necessary to fight back. There are certain kinds of evil that must be met with force, and Johnson gives us a perfect example. The cops show up to stop DJ, only for it to be a ruse. They're actually on his side. Surprise! They mask up, again, not subtle, and do what they do best, beat up brown people. Then we get the best scene in the story. DJ goes to send his love out to the world, but before he can get the words out of his mouth or that arm fully extended, Batman snaps his arm in half. And you can feel it. You can hear it. I didn't need the sound effect. I got that it fills up the visual dead space, but it really doesn't need to be there. This is a perfect example of a picture speaking 1,000 words, and it is glorious. And of course, it upset all the right people. They lost their minds over this. My favorite example of them completely losing the plot was someone race swapping the racist with a black dude and then having Bats use that word for black folks that starts with N and rhymes with bigger. This story was worth it if for no other reason than that it makes so many people tell on themselves. Anyway, I came for the arm break. I stayed for the one-winged angel. I loved this when I saw it because it came out of nowhere, but I loved it even more when I heard Johnson's explanation for the move in the interview. He said he wanted to use it in Transformers, but couldn't find a spot, so he used it here. However, because Absolute Batman is so massive, he had to find a way to get Bats under the guy's legs so that Batman could do the move, so he had the guy run. Now, you might look at this and go, that guy's dead. Pretty much all of these guys are dead. Well, not according to Daniel Warren Johnson. In the interview, he said that 100% of these guys are alive. He thought of it like the violence in the Popeye show. It's cartoon violence. It looks bad, but they're basically fine. To which I say, sure, Jan. I played the Arkham games. This is the same thing. They're not knocked out. Nobody's neck bends that way normally. They're dead. They're all dead. And this is where we get a bit of irony from the people complaining about this, because these are the same people who love the Punisher and the idea of a superhero killing bad guys. The reason they object to killing these guys is because they don't think someone putting a gun up to an illegal kid's head and threatening to kill him is a bad guy. This is also where those people will try to sidestep their hypocrisy by claiming Batman doesn't kill, ignoring that they're the same people who've said for years that Batman's no-kill policy is stupid and that he should kill bad guys, from villains like the Joker to the teenage thugs stealing hubcaps. Their complaint isn't about the violence or who does it. It's really about who it's done to. That said, the story is very concerned with the violence. After Bat saves the kid runs away in fear. Now, this is a common trope for kids to find Batman frightening, but in context to this story, the message is that his actions are just as terrifying as those of the racist. And we see this when he commits to pummeling some sense into DJ. Again, Father Peters comes in for the save, and Bats wants to know why. And Johnson has Peters deliver a perfect response. I don't know how to make it better. I only know how not to make it worse. Please, this isn't the way. But not to Batman. He says, this is my way. I love everything about this scene because it puts the story into perspective. Batman's anger is understandable. It's righteous. It's justified, as are his actions. It's reasonable for him to use violence to protect people from violence. The question is whether that will prevent more violence or whether it will make things worse. And I'm so glad Johnson doesn't answer that question. He leaves it to haunt the rest of the story and Batman himself. Batman follows the racists back to their base and finds the rig that'll eventually become the Batmobile. He then uses it, and again, Johnson can claim this is cartoon violence, but Bats is literally running these races over with a giant truck. Clearly, this Bats went to the Zack Snyder school of violence, cause all these bitches dead. They're all dead. And if they didn't die from the truck running them over, or Bats going ham with the battle axe, they definitely died from the flamethrower. Father Peter's coming over here with some salve. You gonna need a little bit more than that. You got some skin grafts in that bag? But again, Johnson knows what to do with the story. Batman asks why, and Father Peter says, "You have your way, and I have mine." Now, Johnson wrote that long before the discount Gestapo fired pepper balls at Pastor David Black, but this moment locks in so well with that one because this is what pastors and priests are supposed to do. They're supposed to help their flock, regardless of their sins. And the choice of using a priest wasn't an accident. Johnson said in the interview that he needed a character to basically balance out the story, to call out what's happening, and that's what Father Peters does. He's kind of the voice of reason in the story, and he's what makes this a story and not just Johnson venting. Peters is there to ask the question, is violence the way? He's also there to remind Batman of his father's words. The story wraps up with a flashback of Bruce and his father, and Bruce saying that he wants to make a difference just like Thomas, that he's going to be like his father. And we see that his father has a copy of that old protest photo. The man next to Father Peters was Thomas Wayne. That completely recontextualizes those scenes with Peters because, in a way, when Bruce talks with Peters, he's kind of talking with his father. In the flashback, Thomas says to Bruce, we barely knew what we were doing then, but I guess I barely know what I'm doing now. But you, Bruce, I know your nature. I know who you are, deep down. You have a strong and compassionate heart. All you have to do is be yourself. No matter what you do, I'll always be proud of you. But would he be proud of what Bruce did on this day? Batman isn't so sure, and that's the perfect way to end the story. It also reflects Daniel Warren Johnson's perspective. He says in the interview that he doesn't know if violence is the answer. He just knows that he felt like he needed to do something, and this story was something he could do. This is the way to tell these types of politically driven stories. You don't need to sugarcoat things or try to both sides the issue by acting like it's reasonable or justifiable to go into a migrant camp and just murder people. But you do need to show that sometimes there aren't any easy answers. Sometimes there aren't any answers. As we've seen, peaceful protesting didn't get rid of racism. It's still here and currently controls all three branches of the federal government and is stoking fear in blue cities across the country. But we've also seen that violence doesn't get rid of racism. We fought a world war to rid ourselves of it, and it's still here, especially on social media. That said, it is cathartic to see violent racists get what they have coming, especially when it's so expertly drawn. This is a must-have book. If you don't have it yet, go and buy it. If you can find it, because I have a feeling this book is going to sell out. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.